All right, ladies and gentlemen, we can have your attention now. It is time, after having a wonderful lunch, compliments, as our president said earlier, Jesus and some good people paid for our lunch today, and so we want to just thank those persons who felt it not robbery to share the resources in the kingdom. And that is really an example of why we need training like we are about to receive. We who are part of the kingdom of God should be able to finance the vision of the kingdom. I believe where God gives provision, where God gives vision, he gives provision. And the provision is in the hands of the people. And we just have to learn how to manage it better so that we can finance those things that God has called us to do. I believe this with all of my heart, and folk at Mount Zion, they've heard me say it. There's not a shortage of money in our churches. There's not even a shortage of money in the African American community. Our problem is knowing how to manage and leverage the resources that we have. Because when you look at the accumulative spending power and the money that we spend on stuff, we are one of the wealthiest group of people in the world. And so this workshop will help us learn how to leverage that, how to manage that. And so again, on behalf of our president, we want to welcome you back now to what is the beginning of a series of lectures that are designed to equip and empower you so that we can be engaged in the work of the Lord. We are blessed to have as our speaker this afternoon our brother Phil Boyd. He is the owner of E.E. Waters Company, financial management company. He comes to us after a long banking career, retired from Wachovia Bank. And many, many years ago, I used to bank with them. They bought out the bank I was with, and I had a relationship with them, a wonderful bank. And his firm specializes in wealth management for individuals and businesses. And I like that, wealth management. It's not about my income, but it's about wealth and how you manage that. And so without further ado, let's give Brother Boyd a Mount Zion, Fellowship Missionary Baptist Convention welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm not normally at the pulpit, I'm normally at the table, and I know after you all have eaten, you're a little sleepy now, so I assure you this will not be a sermon, but this will be a discussion. My name is Eric Waters, and I am the founder and president of E.E. Waters & Company. And as the introduction indicated, I have spent a number of years, approximately 20 years, in banking, specializing mainly in wealth management for businesses and individuals. And as we all know, the church is also a business. And as the introductor said, part of our responsibilities as Christians, as faith believers, is to be good stewards of the resources that God has blessed us with. Not to squander, but to be fiduciarily responsible for the benefits and the blessing that he has bestowed upon us. So greetings to Dr. Mack, President of the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Convention of Georgia, as well as the Vice President, Dr. Daniel Simmons, and the Executive Board of the group, as well as the host church. Beautiful sanctuary, and I'm from Savannah, so I always drive by Macon. But it is always a pleasure to be here at the house of the Lord and talk about other responsibilities that we have as Christians and as believers of faith. One of the things that I do primarily, and the reason when I realized after spending 20 years with the bank, the bank is designed to kind of give you the canvas of how individuals, businesses manage their wealth. And I appreciate the comment from Dr. Simmons in the sense that we have sufficient resources. It's not the lack of money. It is the lack of knowledge that we use to spend our money. Okay? And when you're building edifice like this, recognizing that it takes a lot of capital, they don't give you a break when you're an African American church to build this facility. It costs you millions and millions of dollars. then you also have to reinvest into it. So I'm delighted to hear that you all are having this conversation. And secondly, what I realized through my journey was, it is responsibilities of individuals like ourselves to give back, teach each other, teach our kids. So it's not only about growing wealth, it's the preservation of wealth, and it's the transfer of wealth for future generations to come. And the one thing that this subject matter today about managing your money during the pandemic. Now that is very appropriate for why we are here. And the key lesson to learning about managing your money through a pandemic, I'm certain that you all have heard this word the past 12, 18 months, is pivot. You've got to learn how to pivot, okay? You can't stop your life because of a pandemic. It is a temporary phase of time. Well, you say, well, Eric, it's been around almost 2 years. Well, you take 2 years and let's go 100 years down the line. It's going to be a thought process. So this opportunity to chat with you about managing your money during the pandemic is right, I think is necessary, and what the goal is today, because we each have different financial circumstances. We all have different financial goals. But knowing where to go, knowing it's okay to ask about your money and things that you need to do to basically stabilize your life, your financial freedom, is what it's all about. So the first phase is will be just to set up the overall platform of what we're going to talk about. The second phase is I'm going to walk you through specific opportunities that we have as individuals, as business owners, etc. And then the third thing I'm going to leave you with is to show you who's focusing on us. Okay? Because while you've got money in your pocket, while you've got money in the bank, while you've got money in your churches, there is a group that we are completely ignoring that is focused on doing what? Getting that money out of your pocket. Okay? And once you know who they are, you know how to handle yourselves accordingly. All right? The first thing in anyone's financial, I will say, bibliography is you got to have what? You got to have a budget. And growing up, our parents I have 2 sisters and an older brother. And so parents, my mother taught school, so she got paid once a month. Daddy worked for the city of Savannah, got paid twice a month. So what they would do is sit us at the edge of the bed with a yellow legal sheet of paper, write down all the bills, write down all the income, and this is what we got left over. Not just me, but the family. And so if you have to go back to your roots of doing a paper budget, it's okay. Because if you don't know what you got, how are you going to know where you're going? All right? And so the budget is the first thing that we need to think about. And in today's society, and what the pandemic has done, it forced us to change without warning. First it was, oh, this is going to be like the little flu, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. Then we started seeing folks dying, our loved ones, it happens without any other knowledge. So that is called a crisis moment. And that is when we make our worst mistakes, when we are in crisis. And when you're in crisis, you don't do what you normally would do because you're emotional. And one thing about money is not emotional. It'll pass from everybody's hand who's in here 3 or 4 times. It don't love nobody but itself, okay? So when we think about that, the first task in our budget is to focus in on our income, focus in on our savings, focus in on our business revenues, focus in on, where are our sources of income? And then what the pandemic has done, some people were affected by being laid off, some people were furloughed, some people saw a loss of business income, people saw a lack of people coming to church, okay? And so tithes and offering are impacted by the pandemic. So when you recognize that the pandemic doesn't love me, you, or anybody else, it's preparation, preparation, preparation. So during these economic times, one thing that does not change is what? The mortgage company wants its money. The car finance people want their money. The lien holders to the church mortgage want their money. Everybody want their money. Okay? And so what happens, and we got to think about the country that we live in, when you think about everybody suffering, and it's not due to economic woes. And the one thing in this pandemic situation that we've learned, when people couldn't go to work, people were at home, there were just a lot of things that were going on. We went back to basics. Not going out, having to be at every restaurant, not being at every, department store. You know what I'm saying? We went back to huddling down. And what we realized was that a lot of that spending was what? Frivolous. Okay? And the key thing that we missed during this pandemic was that our health is our number one investment. One thing that you can have all the money in the world. Look at Steve Jobs from Apple, one of the wealthiest men on the planet, could not save his own life, but had plenty of money. All right? And so we have to be mindful of being a good steward of what God has blessed us with. So when you begin this budget, you can use a sheet of paper, you can go to Google, you can go to Quickens. There are instruments out there to help you, but you got to be honest with yourself now. I got $10,000, I'm spending 12. I got to cut back somewhere. And we know what we like to spend our money on. So the budget is the first key component to surviving through a pandemic. Now, once you have created your budget, you always start with fixed expenses. Fixed expenses being your mortgage, your car payment, your gas bill, light bill, things that you know that are going to be reoccurring every month. So what the lead that we saw from the federal government was, wait a minute, we can't have a pandemic and then allow the country to fall economically behind. So the government stepped up and said, what, we're going to do a moratorium, meaning they can't foreclose on your home. All right? They can't kick out your apartment. So you always take the lead of the government to kind of see what services are out there financially that can help benefit you. So for instance, if you have fixed expenses, there's a rule that we've used in the financial world for quite some time. It's the 50-30-20. Okay? 50% of your bring home pay, what goes in your direct deposit, the net after you pay Uncle Sam, because he's getting his money first, that 50% should be utilized for your living expenses, for food. And then the 30% in the second category is used for your variable expenses. Variable expenses can be anywhere from monthly expenditures that you spend on travel, entertainment, things of that nature. The remaining 20% is savings, and savings for retirement, savings to tithe, savings in general, okay? And so when you've got that ratio, that guideline, and some of us have more than others, some of us have less than others, but the principles still apply. So with this strategy, what you do is you combine your expenses into categories, no more than 3. Keep it very simple. Now, if you start seeing that your variable expenses clearly outweigh your fixed, that technically is an opportunity for you to do what? Cut costs. And right now, one of the biggest cost savers that we have in Georgia is car insurance. You can take your annual car insurance that you may be paying $1,000 a year and get it down to $300 or $400. Okay? And the biggest culprits that we see in our community, State Farm and Allstate. All right? So in the pandemic, when you're not driving, you're not going to work, then the risk is lower. Then why am I paying a higher premium? Okay? So those are things to kind of keep into your mind. And so with insurance, it's an easy way to cut your payments in half. Now for property owners, if you have a mortgage, whether it's insured with the federal government or it's not, there are programs available to renegotiate your mortgage. Now the refinance is the one that we think about all the time. Well, I'll just stretch the payment out longer. One of the things you want to be mindful of a refinance is the closing costs. When you start seeing the escrow payments, the mortgage insurance being rolled in, the attorney fees, the title search, and all these things, what they have a tendency to do is add it to the back of your loan, which increases the principal amount that you owe. And the rule of thumb is if you are not experiencing a 1.5% to a 2% rate differential, for instance, if your current rate is 5%, you can refinance at 3.5, you refinance at 3. Anything lower than that is costing you. And if you do have the ability to go from a 30-year to a 15, that's in your favor as well. And why would that be? You're building up equity. And equity will sustain you in a downturn of a market. If you're highly leveraged at 100% and there's a correction, then they're going to say, oh, your house is not worth what it was, you're underwater. But if you've got equity in there, you got a little bit of a cushion. So they can't come and say, well, can't make your payments, etc. But there are other techniques out there called a loan modification, where you don't have to refinance all of the terms. The bank can say, well, we're going to adjust your interest rate for you. It'll be a $300 fee, $500 fee, etc. No appraisal required. Have a nice day, right? The third trick is the forbearance. Now, this is what's going to get a lot of people in trouble in the near future. And this is a nationwide situation. So the forbearance says, okay, we recognize the pandemic. We're going to defer all your payments, okay? But we're still charging you interest, all right? Now, they're charging you interest on the deferred and the interest on top of the interest, and they're going to stick it to the back of the loan, okay? So if you have resources, savings, emergency funds, etc., you don't have to do that. So you have to watch out for the cost, the hidden fees. And so the remaining amount of money that you have left over, that 20%, that is for your financial goals. That is your emergency fund. That is your savings. That's your future for retirement. And so the rule of thumb there is you want to have on average 6 months of operating costs. Whatever it takes to run your household, run your business, you want 6 months of that in liquid capital. Now, liquid capital in today's environment does not mean it has to sit in your checking account. All right? It can be in the form of a money market. It can be in the form of a CD. There are other options out there. So I encourage you to engage with your financial institution and figure out what are your best options. So when you have those cash reserves, now that you've figured out where you're spending your money, I got this cash left over. The cash reserves, typically we leave in banks, credit unions, because they're what? FDIC insured, all right? Now, FDIC insured basically means that if the bank were to fail, your money is protected, all right? And it's up to, right now, $250,000. Now, if you've noticed through your money market accounts, CDs, et cetera, you're lucky if you're getting 1%, all right? Now, I'm going to tell you what other folks are doing. They are going to their brokerage firms, whether it's Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, et cetera, and they are investing in high-yield CDs that may be paying you 2%, okay? So quit getting that 0.06, go to the 2%. And it is secured, because on a investment account shared with a brokerage firm, you get up to $500,000 of security. So your funds won't fail. So those are some opportunities for you to take a look at with your cash reserves. And that is everything that you would potentially need 3 to 6 months, et cetera. So we're tackling debt. You get rid of debt when interest rates are low, because you're saving the cost of capital, and that's that 1.5%, 2% differential, you're saving money. But also be on the lookout for refinancing, where you basically tack on the remaining principal balance and your interest to the end. Now, there is one other piece of opportunity out there specifically for businesses, and this is negotiating what you call what I call a negotiated debt release. For instance, you have a business, whether it's a medical practice, restaurant, it can be a pharmaceutical company, it can be a meat shop, etc. The bank can negotiate a reduction of debt. So what does that mean? You owe them $100,000. You recognize that you can really service this loan at $50,000. The bank negotiates that you move the loan to another bank while you're still in good financial standings, and then they write off the rest. Well, then you'll say, well, Eric, that's going to go against my credit. Not if you do it correctly. And doing it correctly is being in contact with the right folks, your attorneys, your estate planning advisors, your insurance advisors, your investment brokers. That community of people are critical to your financial success and your financial survival. So that's what you do with debt. So Now that we've taken care of your debt, we've taken care of your cash resources, so Eric, what do we do now that we've saved some money? We've got some money, nestled away. You go to Wall Street. So what has happened in our community, in our society, that's why we're seeing low rates of return on our deposits. The capitalistic system is forcing us to invest our money into the market. That is stocks and bonds, that's mutual funds, that's ETFs, that's everything you can think of. And so you can say, well, I'm not really familiar with this. I'm somewhat afraid of it. And that's what we've got to kind of take our blinders off. And we've got to sit down with these financial professionals and understand what really is Wall Street. Because if you think about it, if any of you work, you've retired from organizations, you basically buy merchandise, your money is going into Wall Street. When you pay your insurance bill on your home and your auto insurance, those premium dollars and your life insurance specifically is invested in Wall Street. So you have to think about it. If they can do it, why can't I? So let's think about, why should we do it? Keep in mind, if your current banks are paying you less than 1%, the market over the past 100+ years or more has averaged about 10 to 15% annually. That's in a good market, in a down market, in a side market. Because that's where our capital from a global society is. And so what you want to do is take, if you're involved in a working 401k plan or 403b, you want to maximize those contributions now. Well, I can't afford it. Well, yes, you can, and here's how you do it. The one thing about having a tax-deferred investment plan, if you're in a 28-30% tax bracket, that 15% that you take off the top is tax exempt. You don't pay taxes on that. So you're paying yourself for the future, for when you need it. And so when you think about this, well, Eric, I'm self-employed. Then what you do is you create what they call a self-retirement plan, self-employment plan, an SEP. And so that is designed for individuals who have their own businesses to also contribute to the market at a deferred amount. And you can also set up your own individual 401k. All right, so I've done all of this. So where does my money go? Now, this is the slide that really blows your mind. It's the total returns of individual stocks for the past 10 years. All right, total return. So that means their ups, their downs, everything they've done for the past 10 years, including the pandemic. So watch me on this. Bitcoin, which we've all heard about as the digital currency, etc. The past 10 years, it has been up 572,917%. So let's break it down into real dollars, all right? So if you had $1,000 when you bought Bitcoin 10 years ago, not use Bitcoin, but invest in Bitcoin, and I'll give you a difference. How much do you think that is worth as of today? $5,721,017. So when people talk about buying Bitcoin, you don't want the coin. You want to invest in the currency. All right? So when you invest, you're not investing to consume. You're investing to get others to consume. They pay you. Tesla, Elon Musk, up 15,158% in 10 years. That would equate to, if you invested $1,000, you would be, that value, that 1,000 would be $454,740. 10 years now, okay? So you're investing not in buying a Tesla, you are investing in owning Tesla stock. All right? Thirdly, Netflix. Netflix is up $1,666. So that subscription that we pay, they're leveraging that. And that has yielded, once again, that $1,000 will be worth $16,000 today. So you see the multiplier. Let's take Home Depot, competitor of Lowe's. They were up 9.96% over the past 10 years. And this is the fundamental reason why we have to collectively be in the market. The U.S. stock market is 54% of the entire global market on this planet. So when you think about investing, what you're doing is you're investing in companies and products and services and management teams that you think are doing a great job, and you're wanting other people like yourselves to buy the product. All right? So that is why you want to take a look at looking at stocks. And think about it. The most recent one that we've had, Kobe Bryant has now, been deceased relatively 2 years? All right. His initial investment into Armour Body, the beverage, okay? Now, let's think about this now. He put in $6 million roughly of capital. And they're estimating that that is now monetized about $400 million. He didn't make that much money playing basketball. Okay? And guess who bought him out? Coca-Cola. We drank Coke, we've worked for Coke, we've done all these things. So that is your investment, all right? So what I'm showing you is here's what you do to get market exposure. Now let's say, hey, well, Eric, it's still a pandemic, I'm a little gun shy. What other options are there out there for me? There are what we call inflationary investments that go against the market being down. One of the biggest ones we look at is real estate. And think of real estate not only as your home, so if you've got equity in your real estate, use the equity to buy an investment piece of property. And if you don't want to do that, guess what? There are other ways you can invest in real estate without being a landlord or a property owner. There are real estate investment trusts. Go to your bank, go to your broker, talk about these things that pay you a 7% interest rate. So while you sit over there with 1% in your checking account, you can get 7% over here. It's still safe. You also have rental, with another trend that's happening in Georgia specifically. You will start seeing a lot of these large home building companies like D.H. Horton. They will begin to develop subdivisions where you cannot even buy the house. You got to rent it. Got to rent it. So when we've seen these things, we need to participate not as a consumer, but as an owner investor. That is how we're going to have the wealth that we spend. One of the other aspects that we want to talk about, and I'm going to wrap this up because I definitely want to have some Q&A. There's a group, it's a global research firm called Nielsen. Nielsen publishes, on average, once a year, I would say 80, 90, 100-page document on black spending, right? So as you were mentioning earlier, the $1.7 trillion of spending, et cetera. How they're able to capture that is because Nielsen does the research. So when you're on your phones, when you're on your tablets, when you're logging into Facebook, Twitter, all those types of social media information, it is capturing your behavior. So worrying about the pandemic is not what we should be worried about. We should be worrying about this pandemic, all right? So you manage your money in any economic cycle the same way you always do. You pull out your paper, you take a look at it. This is what I got, this is what I don't have, but we have to also hold our financial advisors accountable. You have to. If you're not satisfied, move your money someplace else, okay? And so in the Nielsen analysis, and I just picked out a few slides that I thought were relevant today. They identified the highest reaching apps within categories. And so on the social media platform, African Americans are typically about 70% more likely to utilize Facebook, 46% more likely to use Instagram, 34% most likely to use Pinterest, 33% to use Twitter, 32% on Snapchat. So these companies make their money by selling your activity to advertisers. So they're focused on you. So you think about it, when you go to a site or you saw a tweet and then you recognize, well, how do they know I like this particular shoe or that particular handbag? Because they're selling your data. So what do? We buy Facebook stock. Okay? We buy Twitter stock. And then also it talked about African Americans' influence and one thing about Nelson, whether it's displayed, African Americans dictate almost 70% of pop culture. We show everybody what's in style, what's in trend, what's going on, and how to look a certain part. So we've got to take our dollars and invest in those types of opportunities. And so a lot of us have, friends, family, children that utilize Cash App. Okay? So Cash App and Zelle and all of these types of immediate exchange of monies, and think about immediate exchange of monies, all right? And they charge you a fee to send them your money, okay? That you're going to give to somebody else who's going to spend it or do whatever. So you got to think about that. So when you look at these, what I call fintech companies, they're technology-based ways to send money, electronically. We need to start buying stock in Cash App, buying stock in Zelle. And then for entertainment, we've got YouTube, again, Netflix, and Pandora, all right? Now, YouTube is owned by Google. And so this is how they hide. We see their regular names, so they'll, we're owned by somebody else. So basically, YouTube is a privately held company owned by a publicly traded company, which is Google, which trades under a name called Alphabet Inc. So what do? We buy Alphabet Inc. So when you're sitting down with your retirement specialist, when you're sitting down with your financial advisors, have them do inventory of your portfolio, inventory of what's in the bank. Do I have gold? Do I have silver? Or do I have nothing at all? And it takes them nothing but a second to run your portfolio and say, well, I don't see these names in my portfolio. Why am I not exposed to these? And they can readjust it. Then the other thing, multi-category commerce. And so they come up with all these sophisticated names, which we all use: Amazon, Walmart, okay? We have to own those stocks. And so when you see that they're priced at $1,000 a share, $500 a share, and you say, well, Eric, all I got is $500. These companies also issue fractional shares, okay? You can also invest via what they call an ETF, an exchange-traded fund, where you pay less than 1% to get access to the same entity, all right? And this is all at your banks. Then you think about our home internet services. Verizon, AT&T, all those folks, and AT&T Universal. And now you got live streaming, Every time that we spend our money on things, we need to take inventory of our cabinets, take inventory of our bills, and see, do we own any stock in these companies? Also, one that was really interesting, this was from, they really get into this, the rise of TV content. And so basically they identified the hit shows for African Americans for a certain period of time. It was Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Empire, Love and Hip Hop Again, Basketball Wives, 911, Scandal, Power. The majority of those shows were on VH1, CBS, Fox, Bravo. Now, Fox, one of the most controversial networks on this planet, all right, controlled by one family that owns about 49%, and they've been on Forbes' list of the wealthiest families for decades. Okay? So the only way for us to participate is to buy interest in these companies. CBS owns Viacom, all right? They've got BET, okay, VH1, etc. So again, what we're seeing is we want to be transitioning from consumers to owners. African American focused media spending. These are the companies that I want you to think about that are targeting you. Procter & Gamble, $544,297.6665 just to get into your pocket. Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett, $358 million targeted to get into your pocket. Pfizer, $350 million. AT&T, $295 million. Pepsi, $203 million. Walt Disney, $184 million. Progressive, the insurance company, $198. Johnson & Johnson, $158. Verizon, $148 million. L'Oreal, $138 million to get in your pocket. And then they say, well, how does the black consumer spend their dollars? Now, this one even threw me for a loop. On shelf-stable juices and drinks, they estimate that we spend $1.04 billion a year on juices and drinks. And juices have more sugar in it than anything else. Okay? Detergents, $829 million. Bottled water, $810 million. What we've got to realize, we know how to spend money, okay? That is not the issue. We have got to start owning and basically having other people pay us for what we bring to the table and having the equity. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being, and don't be ashamed of it. Quaker grits advertised $19 million. We've been eating grits all our lives. You don't need Quaker to tell you that you eat grits. You know what I'm saying? They even have Glory Foods. Glory Foods twice. All right? Minute Maid, fruit drinks. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so this study was more so for retail shopping and identified that the African American consumer still prefers to go into brick and mortar stores. So they checked out our top 3 stores now that African Americans prefer to shop at. All right? Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, and Bloomingdale's. Black consumers are 20% more likely than the total population to be willing to pay an extra percentage for a product that is more consistent with our what? Image than anybody else. Okay? Now, if you don't have Saks in your portfolio, if you don't have Neiman in your portfolio, you need to get some ASAP. And so this was just a design, just kind of make sure that we are aware. And once we are aware, we know what we can do. And it is through the consolidation of resources, but also we have a financial and fiduciary responsibility to ourselves, to our communities, and to our church that we are good stewards. And there's nothing wrong with being financially astute, educated, and aware of what your money is doing for you, and holding people accountable. There's nothing wrong with that. Whether we're buying new cars, okay, if you notice, Mercedes-Benz, Cadillac, BMW are showing more of us in their vehicles than anything else. Okay? So why don't we own those stocks? It's just food for thought. So that basically is the conversation, the lecture side. Now, what I'm very curious in are there questions that you may have I'm here. Utilize me.
I just want to know if I understand it right. So if I have a 401k, retirement, you're in retirement, so you can go to your financial person, advisor, and tell them, I want to invest in Saks, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus. It's just that simple.
It is that simple. It really is that simple. Because you got to think about it. You have a retirement plan, you have a 401k or whatever product it is. What happens is that money is directed to what they call money managers around the country, and they select the portfolio. And what I'm saying is you can give them a list of names and ask them to do an analysis. Do I own this? Can you get me exposure to this in my portfolio? And yes, they can. It is that simple. Now, it may require that they stipulate, well, we can get access to it through like an ETF, an exchange traded fund. We may have to buy another mutual fund, et cetera. That's fine. You just want to make sure that you're getting exposed to the things that you like to spend money on, things that you are investing in, and so it's done all the time. And they have industry, what they call speculative products. So for instance, if you want to do anything that's primarily in healthcare, you've got a healthcare portfolio. If you want to do something that's totally around fashion and federated stores, there's an index for that. There are portfolios designed for oil and gas. There are portfolios designed for apartment buildings. So you can do it. We just have to ask. You can do that. Yes.
Good evening. So you're saying what we have in our portfolio right now, we don't really know what we have?
That is true. Because what they'll show you is the top 10% or no more than the top 20% of your holdings. That's not all that's in there.
We need to ask some questions.
You always ask, what's in it? What's my risk? How much is it costing me? Are there any other alternatives? Because think about it. If you got Coke stock, people are still drinking Pepsi. Why don't you have both? When you take a look at all the financial banks in this country, and most of them are publicly traded, they all own each other's stock. Bank of America owns Wells Fargo stock. Wells Fargo stock owns Truist stock. They all own each other. We do the same.
So at this point in time, would you recommend someone having a rapid growth investment in stock or something that's a little bit more?
What in this market, what we're going to experience now, and this is just the indication of what a lot of the analysts are saying, but this is also what history has shown us. After every economic downturn, what typically happens? The market goes up. Okay? And the market, timing the market, we cannot do. All right? But now is the time to be with your financial advisor and talk about, here's my 3-year horizon, here's my 5-year, here's my 10 and my 15-year horizon. Because what's about to happen with the increase of population, that means consumer durables are going to go up, et cetera. And they're already talking about grocery store prices are up 15, 20%, oil and gas prices are up. That's the indicator right there. See, by the time we go and try to figure it out, the shift is already over. So that's why you start now and saying, okay, I'm going to plan for the next 3 to 5 years, maybe the next 5 to 10. And so I typically recommend meeting with your financial investor, advisor, tax planner, at minimum twice a year. At minimum, because you're paying for it.
I'm looking at my Roth because of the fact that 59 and a half.
Yes.
I can start drawing out of it, and of course by then I'm gonna be retired. So,
Right.
and I want to know. That's why I was saying, should I be at that rapid?
Oh, absolutely.
Right now?
Absolutely. And see, and so with the 59 and a half, That is just the rule where if you withdraw or access, you're charged a penalty, okay? Now, what you don't want to do is just leave your money at that company, because what they're going to do is hire somebody else to manage your money, et cetera. But there are strategies around, for instance, within your IRA. Let's say you found a piece of property that you want to buy. You could buy real estate within your IRA and not be taxed whatsoever. Okay.
You mentioned businesses and individuals, and so I want to talk about the church. So if a church has stabilized itself, like the family, you got your emergency fund, you're pretty stable. What are your thoughts about the church getting in the market versus leaving its money sitting in savings accounts?
Okay, you ready for the response? Do you know who the largest investor in real estate and most equities from a church perspective is? The Catholic Diocese, right. They do it all day. The Greek Orthodox, everybody does it. And so what we've got to look at, and we have to be mindful, because this is happening in the Atlanta market, I'm pretty sure it's happening here. A lot of our churches own affordable housing projects, HUD 202 programs, et cetera. Now think about this. So a lot of firms are focused on coming to communities where there is what they call affordable housing opportunities, and they want to partner with the church. All right? What they're doing is, if you think about it, you have a very diverse, economic background of people. So my members who already live in these facilities, I'm going to sell to you. You're going to buy me out for a little bit of money, and then have a nice life. What I mean by that is, the church's opportunity to own real estate is critical, but not only residential. You want commercial, you want retail, you want all those things, but you got to partner with the right people, all right, and hold them accountable, because you're bringing your equity to the table, you're bringing your resources to the table. Make sure it's a fair deal. Get more than, I always bring my client 3 to 4 options, and then we decide. But yeah, real estate all day long, definitely the market, and you have funds, investment funds that are geared towards churches. Okay, and the beautiful thing about the church is you are a 501c3 exempt. Okay, exempt. And exempt means you don't even have to file a tax return if you don't want to. Because one thing they want to do is see what's going on behind the doors. Okay? Some things we have to maintain private and in conference. Well, what are the requirements? Because we know if we meet them or not, but we should be into real estate. We should be into, when you see the new high-rises that come up downtown Macon, okay, when that developer goes in, you all could have a private equity ownership in that new high-rise. Okay? Specifically hospitals, and when the banks come by and they want to, we want to talk about home ownership. We want to do this, financial literacy, all that kind of stuff. Nah, what we need to be talking about is how do we get in your pocket? You know what I'm saying? We know what you want from us, but this is what we want from you. That's how we play that game. And the way you hit them, we did this. I can't tell you which church, but we did it. We sent them, they didn't want to renew the church loan. And so we called them and said, okay, well, we've never missed a payment. We've, been good borrowers, et cetera, got money in the bank, et cetera. Well, we don't feel like, we want to be in the church business anymore. So I said, okay, well, when's your next quarterly meeting? They said September, yada, yada, yada. Well, we're going to bring a bus down there and tell us to our face. They immediately called back, well, we're going to renew the loan. Y'all take our time. They don't want to do it. So we got leverage, and we just got to know how to use it the right way. So the church should be involved in every economic activity that exists, because you are a stakeholder. Your members are stakeholders. You know what I'm saying? And it's the right thing to do, because think about it. When something's wrong, if there's problems with the police and crime, let's go to the church, okay? Every time there's an election, somebody want to come up here and say, vote for me. You know what I'm saying? I know the doors of the church are open, but sometimes you got to close them, okay? We have to be able to have that dialogue. And there are relationships out there to help you all take this to the next level. Because if the church is financially sound, the members are financially sound, then we're financially sound, collectively. That's what I said. Yep. Anyone else? If not, this has been a sheer pleasure. And for your reference, there's a PDF file, there's a PowerPoint presentation. My contact information is within, so be blessed, all right? Thank you.
Amen. Let's give him a better hand than that. Amen. Let's give him a much better hand than that.